Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal and how insane I think it's going to be. So we don't know exactly when this event is going to happen. All Nintendo has told us, they told us back on May 7th, that there would be a Nintendo Direct in June, we've gotten that Nintendo Direct already, and that they would be revealing more details about the successor to the Switch sometime before the end of the fiscal year, which would be March 2025. So theoretically, we may be still quite a few months away, but my personal expectation is that it is happening sooner than later. I'm thinking perhaps maybe in a couple months. I talked more about that in a video from last week. If you're curious, you can check that one out. But this time it's mostly focused on just how insane or good or amazing this reveal is going to be. What is it going to entail? And so that's what I would like to talk more about today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, so please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So the bit of news that inspired me to speak on this today was this recent article from Video Games Chronicle, VGC, written by Chris Scullion, which is basically just relaying some info from the Nintendo recent Q&A with their investors, and there's some translations that we're waiting on here, but essentially the question they were focusing on was when they were asking President Shuntaro Furukawa how they would be dealing with scalpers for the Nintendo Switch 2. And for those who are unaware what a scalper is, that is someone who buys a console, typically early on at launch, and resells it at a much higher price. So if we get a whole bunch of scalpers that buy this limited quantity of hypothetically the Switch 2, and then sell it for double the price on eBay, then, well, that's gonna kind of make things kind of lame for a lot of people. And so this has happened before, several different times with different companies, including Nintendo, and investors want to know how Nintendo might combat this. So Mr. Furukawa basically said that their plan is to make sure that they have a large quantity of Switch 2s out there, successors to the Switch, because it's now officially named the Switch 2, to combat the scalpers. If there's a great deal of Switch 2s out there, and they are able to meet demand upon launch, then you're not going to have people buying the console and then reselling it at a very high price, because most people who wanted it initially will be able to get it. Now, the thing about console launches though, is that even when it's not that great of a console, they tend to sell out pretty quick. But of course, most of the time, companies are in a rush to put out their next generation console. Nintendo, on the other hand, as we've seen throughout this generation, have become very patient with their releases, and I think that also includes the hardware. There's been a lot of talk that the hardware would have come out this year, but it's been internally delayed to early next year. And so perhaps Nintendo is indeed taking their time, making sure that they have as many consoles ready as possible, have the best lineup as ready as possible, and when they finally reveal this console and they start that marketing lead up, which will just be a few months away before release, it's going to be very exciting, and a lot of people are going to get the console very early on, and scalpers hopefully won't be that much of an issue. Now, something else that was mentioned is that the issue of the semiconductor shortage isn't really an issue anymore for Nintendo, so it bodes well for them getting a lot of hardware ready to go for the launch of this new generation. And basically this bit of news here just kind of gets me excited. It gets me thinking about how Nintendo's been gearing up, preparing, getting the ultimate lineup ready, getting the consoles ready, and they are going to hit the ground running. Something similar to how they handled things back in late 2016 when they revealed the Switch 1, had that really cool teaser, which I would qualify as an insane teaser, something very exciting. A few months later, they had the presentation, then just a few weeks later, 6 weeks later, they launched the console. I think we're going to be looking at something similar. There will be some differences, but I think it's going to be very similar, and what that ultimately means is a really impressive initial reveal that will basically be advertising a slate of games and really cool hardware that will be very exciting to enjoy throughout the entire year of 2025. And this is my expectation, that we're going to have a really amazing lineup, and when Nintendo reveals this console, we're going to start to see this lineup. There's going to be some really impressive games. I've seen a lot of people perhaps not really believe in this, think that there's going to have to be a drought, not that many games, there's no way they're going to be able to put out like 5, 6, 7, or 8 really killer amazing IPs to start their new generation, but they did it in 2017. We got Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, ARMS, Mario plus Rabbids, Super Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Pokken Tournament Deluxe, Fire Emblem Warriors, Snipper Clips, that all came out in a 9-month window. But this time around, some people think it has to be different because Nintendo's still releasing quality games throughout the year. So even if the Switch 2 does come out next year, there's no way they could have a similar lineup. But I don't agree with this thinking really at all. I think the idea has always been that Nintendo would continue to have consistent software coming out throughout the entire time. The Switch is not just going to fall off a cliff, they are going to continue to release games, support the console, even years into the Switch 2 era. The same way they handled the 3DS. There were still published titles releasing on the 3DS from Nintendo until March of 2019, which was 2 years after the release of the Switch. And it wasn't even just games, they even had revisions, like the new 2DS XL. But regardless, people look at, say for example, the recent Nintendo Direct and how exciting it was and how we're getting games like Mario and Luigi, Echoes of Wisdom, and Super Mario Party all within 3 months of each other for the holidays. People look at that and say there's no way that they're going to have an amazing lineup ready for next year when they're putting out amazing games like this. But as excited as I am for those games to me are basically just what we would have gotten for Nintendo's handheld at the time. Let's take a look at 2016 for a moment here. Let me list off the published games that came out for Nintendo 3DS in North America in that year before Switch came out. Mario and Luigi Paper Jam in January, Fire Emblem Fates in February, Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games in March, then a week later Hyrule Warrior Legends, also in March. In April, Bravely Second End Layer, also in April, Pokemon Rumble World. In May, Disney Art Academy. In June, Kirby Planet Robobot. In August, Metroid Prime Federation Force. Also in August, Style Savvy Fashion Forward. In September, Nintendo had part in publishing this, Dragon Quest VII Fragments of the Forgotten Past. Also in September, Yokai Watch 2. In October, Disney Magic World 2. And Mario Party Star Rush. In November, Pokemon Sun and Moon. And then December, Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS. Basically, they had consistent releases throughout the year, and they were also still releasing a few games on Wii U, like Bayonetta 2, Twilight Princess HD, Pokken Tournament, Star Fox Guard, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Paper Mario Color Splash. So think about it. If Nintendo had that level of support for the Wii U and 3DS in 2016, a year before arguably their best console launch in history, including one of the most amazing lineups we've seen for 9 straight months, what we've gotten this year, you could argue, is worse than how they supported 2016. And I'm not trying to argue it's worse. There is a lower quantity, but I do think what we're getting is pretty good. But the point here is that the kind of games Nintendo's putting out now aren't their biggest budget efforts. Echoes of Wisdom is likely being made by Grezzo, not actually a main Nintendo studio. It's being talked about that Mario and Luigi is being made by ILCA. These are developers that are partnered with Nintendo. And so the point here is that Nintendo has partners, Nintendo has smaller studios that they can depend on to put out some quality releases. We're seeing that Tantalus has put out a solid remaster of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. But what are the big Nintendo studios working on? Likely, the lineup for next year and beyond. And so that brings me to this Switch 2 reveal. When they show off this console for the first time, they're going to show it off with some games. What kind of games could those be? I imagine they're going to be extremely exciting. 3D Mario is rumored. It makes sense. Historically speaking, we get 3D Mario early on for a console anyways. So I expect this, especially because we're probably not getting any sort of 3D Zelda, at least a new one, in the first year, given that Tears of the Kingdom just came out. So there's even more reason to have 3D Mario ready to go. And the 3D Mario team hasn't put out anything in a very long time, so they're almost certainly ready to show off something very soon. But there's even talk of seeing a cross-gen version of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which already looks amazing on Switch. Some people don't even think it's a Switch game. It is definitely a Switch game. The footage they showed during that trailer is 100% Switch footage. But how good could a Switch 2 version look? Well, we might see that during this reveal. Game Freak and Pokemon have been very quiet about Pokemon Legends ZA. They gave us a little bit of a teaser at the beginning of the year, but we still don't know how this game is going to look. Are we going to have to wait all the way until February to learn more about this game, or are they going to show off something sooner? Could it also perhaps be tied into some sort of cross-gen release? Many people doubt this, but I think there's a possibility, and it wouldn't totally shock me if we see it during this reveal trailer. Think about it. If Nintendo doesn't have Zelda, What can they put in a reveal trailer for a new console that will drill up a great deal of excitement? 3D Mario for sure, Metroid Prime 4 would look cool, but a Pokemon game? That would bring in a huge audience. So I understand the pattern of Pokemon Company and Game Freak waiting before they put a game onto a new system, but I think this is a different circumstance and I think it's possible, but of course, we shall see. Going beyond that though, we know Monolith Soft is working on something, and typically they have a break year. Now we pretty much know they're taking a break year, so the pattern tends to suggest that we'll see something from them next year, in time for the release of the new console. Could we see that during this presentation? I think so. And Monolith Soft tends to put out some pretty impressive games for Nintendo hardware. I think it's going to be very exciting to see. And really, there are a variety of other possibilities. Maybe we could see a new Donkey Kong game. Maybe we could see a new Star Fox game. But one big game that many people are anticipating is Mario Kart. Many people feel it's about time. Sure, the Booster First Pass ended not so long ago, last year, but it was just DLC for a whole bunch of remade tracks or repurposed tracks from Mario Kart Tour. And the last time we actually saw a new mainline entry for a console is 2014 with the original release of Mario Kart 8. It's been 10 years. The Mario Kart team may very well be ready to put out a new game. We haven't seen anything significant from them like a new game in years. So I think they also, similar to the 3D Mario team, likely have something cooking that can be shown off during the Switch 2 reveal. So seeing games like this, especially when lately we've been getting a lot of remakes and remasters and smaller budget titles that basically are just HD versions of what we would have seen on a handheld, I think the reaction from the Nintendo fanbase and just the overall response from gamers as a whole is going to be shocked, impressed. I think many people will agree with the description of insane. It's going to be exciting. This doesn't even account for the console itself. What is the console going to be that is going to excite us? Personally, I've been thinking that it's going to be more of something very similar to the Switch, just enhanced. I'm sure there'll be some really cool, nifty little features, but I think the real big shocker is just going to be the look of the games, how impressive they're going to be. We're used to Nintendo making games with pretty weak hardware, so the kind of jump we're going to see here is going to be a big surprise to many. But I am also excited to see this console, how much more powerful it might be, what kind of new features it might have, and how they've improved upon the Switch design, because many people like the core concept of the Switch, but it really is just the first entry in this style of gaming, so how can Nintendo iterate upon this and really evolve this style of system? What we get with this reveal trailer is going to show us that, and I think that also could be very exciting. So yes, I am filled with a great deal of anticipation for this Switch 2 reveal whenever it does happen. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.